past 4 weeks, we've been in this series called Christmas with the Family. And we've said there is no such thing as a perfect family, not even on Christmas. All of us have an ideal in mind for what our family relationships or our relationships with our closest friends will be like. And especially around the holidays, it can be especially apparent to us when our expectations are not met. And our relationships with family and our closest friends are not exactly what we hope and dream they would be. And so in this series, we're talking about those expectations, and we're talking about resolving conflict and growing together, even through conflict and disappointment when expectations aren't met, and how to love each other well. And we've said every week that your family may not look like the family in this graphic. Your family may look much different from this. Maybe you're single and you don't have children, but you have an extended family. And maybe your closest friends are really your family. And you have a church family as well. So we have all kinds of different families, and we want to make sure that you're included tonight. I noticed earlier today that Facebook has released their annual year in review function. You know what I'm talking about? If you're on Facebook, and it'll come up in your feed, and then you can click on it. And I think last year it was a video where they made a video of like your top photos from the year. And I think this year you just kind of scroll through and look at the photos that have gotten the most likes and big family moments that you've had, which reminds us that Facebook knows things about us that we've forgotten about. That's the age we live in. And so I clicked on mine today, and I was looking through it, but it made me think in terms of our journey together with our families, with our closest friends, our loved ones. If you could look at a review, not just of the past year with your family and friends, but of your entire relationship together, what kinds of feelings and emotions would come up if you could scroll through a slideshow of those moments, the ups and downs with your family, your loved one, your closest family and friends? What kind of feelings would you experience? If you could review not just the past year, but you could review your entire family and friend journey together. What has your journey with your loved ones felt like so far? What were the ups and downs? What have you been through together as a family? Tonight we're talking about your family's journey. And like every family, my family has experienced its ups and downs, of course, and even this past year, it's ups and downs. A big up for us this year was a time that was actually a down for a lot of other people probably. It was the day that 6 inches of rain fell on Chandler in one day and flooded the entire valley. And for some people it was terrible, but for others it was this amazing family experience. You know what I'm talking about? And so it was a Monday morning in September, and Hannah got up and got ready for school where she teaches, and she kissed Graham goodbye and went to school. And then about Monday's my day off. It's like International Pastor Day off. You know, it was Monday. And so about 20 minutes later, I heard the garage door open, and it was Hannah. School was canceled because of the flood. And so we got to spend an amazing family day together with Mommy, as we refer to her around our son. Our son, who was 3 at the time, and I and Hannah got to spend the day together. And so we went out and jumped in the puddles in the backyard, and that was one of my Facebook year in review photos. And then we got cleaned up, and then after that, we asked our son, where do you want to go for lunch? Knowing the answer he would give, because his favorite spot on planet Earth is Peter Piper Pizza. We knew that in advance, but that's what he picked. And of course, he has no interest whatsoever in the pizza. He wants to get tokens and play games. And so we went to Peter Piper and bought our tokens, and we were following him from one game to the other. And at that time, he was just obsessed with putting tokens in. Like, that was the most important thing, was putting tokens in the machine. And I kind of snuck away for a minute, and I tried playing this game where, if you've been there, you pull a lever, and then there are a bunch of light bulbs that go around a circle, and then the lights flash around the circle. They're white, and then there are 2 green bulbs. And if you press the button and stop the light on green, you win the jackpot, which is next to impossible to do. At least that's what I tell myself when I lose that game. And so I tried to play it. I biffed on it, didn't hit the jackpot. And then my 3-year-old son walks up and puts in his 2 tokens, and he reaches up to pull the lever down. And then he put his little hand over top of the button, and he watched the lights go around and around and around, and he hit stop. And all of a sudden, bells started ringing, and lights started flashing, and tickets started pouring out of the machine. We have a silent video. We grabbed our phones as soon as we could. I want to show it to you. We grabbed our phones as soon as we could and tried to get this video of Graham. And so he didn't know what was happening. Like, this is the first time this has ever happened. So he was trying to put more tokens in the machine, because that was his thing. And so Hannah and I were just explaining to him, buddy, you won. You won the jackpot. This is exactly what's supposed to happen. That's what happened. And all these tickets are coming out because you can go now get toys with these tickets. We high-fived him, but he was confused. He's like, why is it so noisy? That's what he was thinking. And so we're just explaining to him, you won, you won, you won. That's why all the tickets are coming out, buddy. And we gave high fives. And then the very last thing he says in this video before it fades out is he realizes what happened. Okay. He says, I win. So we thought, how cool, an amazing family day that we needed, and our son wins a jackpot. That's never going to happen again. Well, a couple minutes later, I went to get more pizza, of course, and I saw over in the distance, a few minutes later, more lights flashing and more bells ringing. And I could see Hannah next to the machine. He won another jackpot. He won a second jackpot in the same visit to Peter Piper Pizza. So we had 1,200 tickets or something like oh my gosh, which gets you like this little tiny cheap toy, that could have been $2 at some other store. But now here's the thing. After a 3-year-old wins 2 jackpots in one day at Peter Piper Pizza, what does said 3-year-old expect will happen every time he goes to Peter Piper Pizza? And so it turns out, as we have returned to Peter Piper Pizza, that you don't always win a jackpot. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. Sometimes in our relationships with the people we love, we hit the jackpot in life. Sometimes we have moments that are transcendent, in which we think, this is what memories are made of. This is why I love them so much. These are the times that I'll take with me for the rest of my life. And these are the special times. Or maybe it's just beyond just relationships, but something that I really dreamed and hoped for worked out. And I got it. My prayer was answered. And I hit the jackpot in that particular situation. And it's also true that all of us have experienced the disappointment when we don't hit the jackpot, when things don't go as we expected them to go, when the family relationship is not what we wanted it to be. And this could be extended family. I don't know what that looks like in your family, but whatever we hoped for didn't happen, and we were disappointed, and we had high hopes for something, but it didn't go that way. And those disappointments are as much a part of our family journey together as the up times, as the good times. So what have been some of the ups and downs in your journey? How have you celebrated the ups, and how have you dealt with the downs? Whatever that is, that's the story. However you've dealt with those things, that's the story that you believe and tell to your loved ones. That's your family story. That's your story with your friends. But that's only part of the journey, because it's only up to the present moment. Another question would be, what do you think your journey will be like in the future? You think about all the things you've been through as a family that have brought you up to this point. What do you think the future holds for your loved ones, for your closest friends? Do you think about that? Does it worry you? Do you have hopes and dreams? Do you have plans? But are you worried that maybe they won't turn out the way you hope? Are you uncertain? Well, Rob Bell is an author and a pastor who recently wrote a book called What We Talk About When We Talk About God. And even Oprah liked the book, okay? Oprah interviewed him. He went on tour with Oprah, which I'm pretty sure was like hitting the jackpot for Rob Bell. But Rob was interviewed by Tavis Smiley this week. And the interview was mostly about the book. And so Tavis Smiley asked Rob, who is God? That's what the book's about, and it's kind of the central question. So who is God? Listen to what Rob said. When we talk about God, we're answering the question, what kind of universe do we live in? And that most people have a story that's guiding their life, a narrative. And the word God is essentially the word we use for whatever it is that's the thing behind the thing that undergirds it all. Is the universe a cold, dead, lonely place? Or is there love? Are we on our own? Or is there a greater force that is on our side? That's the story. Which story do you believe? And God means so many things to so many people. I had a conversation recently with some very thoughtful people who I've grown to appreciate, and they told me they don't believe in God. And I said, in a roundabout way in the conversation, I kind of got around to asking, well, what God don't you believe in? Now, it turns out, interestingly enough, that they shared their concept of God, and I don't believe in that God either. Kind of the long, white beard, man in the sky, critical, kind of like a genie in a bottle, Christina Aguilera style. If you treat God the right way, God will grant wishes. And you just kind of, toss your prayer up there and it's going to come true. And the reality just doesn't seem to support that kind of concept of God. And it might kind of surprise you guys to know this, but I'm a pastor and I don't really think I believe in that God either. And so that's a question that I ask sometimes when somebody says, well, I don't really believe in God. Well, what God don't you believe in? Because I may not believe in that God either. Perhaps God is bigger than even what one religion conceives of, or that this thing called Christianity conceives of. Maybe God is the word we use for what we believe about the universe. It's the story, the narrative that guides our lives and the stories that we tell our family. So where does your story lead your family? In other words, what's the result? Like we all have this story, this concept of what's real, what the universe is really like. Maybe some people call that God, some people don't. Where does your story lead? What are the results of it? Like when you tell yourself this story, okay, if the universe is a cold, dead, lonely place, all right, where does that lead? And where does that lead your family journey? If you have a different story about God and what you believe about the universe, then where does that lead your family? What's the result of your story? So you might describe yourself as a spiritual person, not necessarily a religious person. You don't find religious dogma helpful. You don't find any particular organized religions helpful. And here we're sitting in a church service on Christmas Eve that technically is within the Christian religion. By the way, what's one word Jesus never heard in his lifetime? Christian. That was invented after Jesus. We're reading about the Christmas story, but the Christmas story is actually bigger than any one religious system. It's actually a very spiritual, almost mystical story of a journey where there really were no easy answers. There were a lot of questions and doubts going through these characters' minds in the Christmas story. There was no certainty. There was no religious dogma or organized religion involved. They were going totally on faith. Mary and Joseph journeyed together to Bethlehem to give birth to the baby Jesus. I want to read a few verses from the Christmas story in Luke 2 so we just get kind of a handle on their journey. Luke 2, verse 1, in those days Caesar Augustus issued a decree that a census should be taken in the entire Roman world. This was the first census that took place while Quirinius was governor of Syria. You're like, oh, that census, yeah, sure. Yeah. Verse 3, and everyone went to their own town to register. So Joseph also went up from the town of Nazareth in Galilee to Judea, to Bethlehem, the town of David, because he belonged to the house and line of David. He went there to register with Mary, who was pledged to be married to him and was expecting a child. While they were there, the time came for the baby to be born, and she gave birth to her firstborn, a son. She wrapped him in cloths and placed him in a manger, because there was no guest room available for them. So Mary and Joseph journeyed from Nazareth to Bethlehem, but that's only one journey. If we read a little deeper in the story, we understand that Mary and Joseph went through a very difficult journey in which their culture shamed them. Mary had to leave town when she found out she was expecting. She was a young woman who wasn't married. And so that was a difficult journey that some people in our society can identify with when they feel like the disapproving gaze of the religious authorities. and the social shame that comes from other people in their circle, perhaps even in their family. That was a very difficult journey of discomfort and pain. They had lots of questions and doubts. And then Jason and Jennifer and Noah read about the Magi and their journey. Matthew tells us that the Magi are extremely interesting. Matthew tells us that the Magi journeyed from the east to honor the newborn king, the baby Jesus. From what we know about the Magi in the ancient world, they journeyed from what is now Iran to what is now Israel, which is a pretty uncommon journey. And it always has been. But they journeyed because they were spiritually open people. They did not practice the same religion that Joseph and Mary practiced. And they certainly didn't know anything about Christianity that didn't exist yet. They were spiritually open people, and they were searching. They believed that there was a good force in the universe, and that good force in the universe can actually guide human beings. They didn't believe that the universe is a cold, dead, lonely place. They believed that there was love there. And so they followed that guidance, and they were probably Zoroastrian priests, astrologers, and they followed the stars for guidance. After they meet the baby Jesus, they have a dream in which they're warned to take an alternate route back home because King Herod or Herod is trying to deceive them and capture them. So they're open people, and they believe that dreams can guide them. They're just spiritually open people. And they were guided to Jesus. There's one school of thinking about the Magi that they were kind of like traveling missionaries in the Zoroastrian faith, and that they viewed their purpose in life as looking for wherever God was working and then going and supporting that. So they weren't trying to go convert people. They were looking for, like, where is God doing good things in the world? And I'm going to go join God in doing those things. And so that's why they brought the gifts of gold and frankincense and myrrh, because they wanted to join in this thing they believe God is doing in the baby Jesus. Isn't that cool? It's just kind of a cool insight from what we know from history. Bono spoke in a national prayer breakfast a few years ago, and he said that one of the greatest lessons he's learned in life, one of the spiritual lessons, is to stop asking God to bless what he's doing. He said he's learned instead to look for where God is already working in the world and get involved with that because it's already blessed. Isn't that cool? To look for what God is doing that might be outside of religion. It might be bigger than a religious system, but they were open, the Magi were open to whatever this thing might be, and they searched for it, and it led them to the baby Jesus. So one meaning of the Christmas story for your family story, perhaps, is that the universe is rigged in your favor. Perhaps there is a good force that even transcends religion and labels and all kinds of dogmatic beliefs that people have about religion. But there is something in the universe that is good and that will guide you and your loved ones. And if that's true, that means your family is going somewhere. That means your family is going somewhere good. And that if you could see into the future, whatever it is you're going to face, and you'll face things that cause pain. We all know that's true. But if we could see into the future, we would also see that in whatever we face with our loved ones, this good force that some call God is working, maybe behind the scenes in ways that are hard to see, but that this good force that some call God is working to bring good out of any situation that can take place with you and your loved ones. Whatever good can be brought out of it, this good God is guiding you, and the universe is rigged in your favor. What will your future family journey look like? Whatever it is, if this is the story that you adopt as your family story, then God can bring good things out of any situation. So part of your journey, in a very practical way here, part of your journey with your loved ones will be determined by how well you relate to one another. Our journeys can be difficult enough, but they can be made more difficult if we relate to each other in a way that is less than healthy. And so on January 4th, we're starting a new sermon series called Love, Sex, and Marriage. And this is a family service today. So I can't talk about this the way that maybe I would some other time. But if you would, in your worship folder, would you open it up and look at the middle section right there? Would everybody do that, please? Open up your worship folder and look at the middle section. And you see the graphic there at the top. And then underneath it lists all of the sermon titles in this series when we think about how we relate to our closest loved ones, our significant others. And so on January 4th, we're going to talk about what love is. What is love? Baby, don't hurt me. Don't hurt me no more. What does love mean? Is love a feeling? Is love like just an emotional thing? Like, how do you know when you love somebody, and what happens if you don't feel it anymore? How do you rekindle love? So we'll talk about love on January 4th. I think I have the titles listed on the next slide. January 11th, we'll talk about the S word, and you can guess what that might be, but here's my hope. If you have received messages from the church that have caused you excess guilt and harm related to this subject, my hope is on January 11th, it will be an incredibly healing experience for you as we talk about how you are created and what that means for your life. And you might get a different view of the S word than you've ever received in church before. Am I being obtuse enough about this right now? I'm so uncomfortable right now talking about this. January 18th, we're going to look at survey data. So the title is The Fastest Way to a Man's Heart Is, and I'm sure we could all fill in the blank there with lots of different words. But we're going to look at survey data for what do men wish their partners knew about them in their relationship. And then the same thing on January 25th, she moves in mysterious ways. We're going to look at survey data. What do women say they wish their partners knew about them? That's going to be pretty eye-opening, I think. February 1st, dating before and after marriage. And then on February 8th, we're going to welcome a special guest, author and pastor Kathy Escobar. Kathy pastors a church in Denver. And she's going to come as our guest, and she's not going to talk specifically about this topic, but she is going to talk about her new book called Faith Shift, and how the way we view the Bible and God and religion and spirituality, and it has a profound effect on how we view these more earthy things in our lives. And so it's going to be an incredibly interesting day on February 8th with Kathy Escobar. And then February 15th, which is Valentine's Day weekend, we're going to have a panel discussion. I want to pull a panel together of people who have been married for various lengths of time and talk about how do you kindle a love that lasts a lifetime. So in our journey with our loved ones, we want to be equipped to relate to one another in the best way possible. One more promo. The next Sunday after that is the first Sunday in Lent, February 22nd, and we're going to welcome special guest Frank Schaefer. So inside of your worship folder, you also have this promo card. Did you see this? Frank is a New York Times best-selling author. He's going to come and speak about his faith journey, and that's going to kick off a Lent series called Atheists for Jesus. Because we're talking about, who is God? What does the word God mean? We're going to kick off a series called Atheists for Jesus for Lent, which is a phrase coined by Richard Dawkins, the famous atheist in an essay he wrote. So we have an extremely exciting, 3 or 4 months coming up in One Church. I hope you'll come back. If you would, those of you who really consider One Church to be your church home, if you would, take a picture of this card, if you have Instagram or Facebook or Twitter, and just post it, if you would please, and invite your friends to come back on January 4th for Love, Sex, Marriage. So what does it look like to be guided on a journey and to tell yourself and your family the story that the universe is rigged in your favor? As you think about your future together with your loved ones, what could your family's future journey look like if the Christmas story is your story? Bigger than any one religion, but if the Christmas story is your story. Maybe this is one example. Natalie DuBose is a single mother of 2 small children who owns a bakery in Ferguson, Missouri. And as an American family, over the past couple of months, we have been reminded, many of us, that we still have some work to do in our journey as an American family. We've been reminded of how crucial love and justice are in our society. And after the painful events in Ferguson, Natalie's bakery was looted and damaged, and she had saved for a long time to open up her bakery. That had been her dream, but the bakery was so badly damaged that she wasn't able to fill her orders. So according to the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, Natalie DeBose certainly had every reason to be bitter. DeBose, a single mother of two, poured her life savings into opening a small bakery on South Florissant Road in Ferguson. Sales immediately tanked 3 months later, just 3 months, when crowds rioted in Ferguson over the killing of Michael Brown. So you can imagine the hopelessness that she would feel in her journey with her and her little family. Her dreams had been dashed. This was one of the lowest moments in her life, I'm sure. Somebody suggested that she start an online funding drive on GoFundMe. And she told her story, and her story reached the media as well, that she's a single mom trying to realize the American dream, and her business was damaged. And you can imagine, she was probably thinking this is like a last-ditch effort, kind of out of desperation to save her dream. Well, after telling her story in 2 days, donors through GoFundMe had given her $200,000 in 2 days. Like, what are you getting for Christmas tonight? You know what I mean? Like $200,000 to rebuild her business. Wow. The paper said within the span of 36 hours, she had seen humanity rise from the worst to the best possible light. When a reporter asked her how she felt about all the people who had donated and sent her cards and prayers and messages, Natalie said, "I wish I could just sit down and respond to every voicemail and every prayer out there and give them a hug." Now listen to this. She said, "I wasted so much time crying yesterday when I could have been catching up." The day before, she believed one story. The universe is a cold, dead place. And me and my babies are alone. And this is meaningless, and who knows what's going to happen. I have no idea. That's the result of one story. But in 36 hours, the story that she believed about the universe, or about the big story, about what some people might call God, that story was changed to where she realized, I could have just been baking cookies the whole time, because this was all going to be all right. Goodness and beauty was going to come out of this extremely painful situation. She and her family were able to tell themselves a new story. What could your family's future journey look like if your story is informed by the Christmas story? That the universe is rigged in your favor. That there is a good God who is guiding you and your family. And when you look ahead through the eyes of faith, you see that there's no challenge that your family's ever going to face, whether it's 2015 or beyond, that you can't make it through. Because the universe is rigged in your favor. This God is on your side. If the Christmas story is your family's story, that's true. There is no challenge too big for you. What could your family's future journey look like if your story is the Christmas story? Will you pray with me? God.